Welcome to School in the System podcast. I'm your host, Darian Kelly, and today I have a very, very special guest, Will Baggett. Will is the founder and CEO of Emergent Executives, LLC, a leading personal and professional development platform. And he's also the author of A Blueprint for a Successful Career. Will, thank you for coming on the show, and I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. I followed your work, man. I've seen the great interviews you conducted. So I'm definitely humbled to be online with you and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, first off, just as I know it's a lot, a lot that's been taking place in the midst of COVID. Just tell me kind of like, get me up to speed. Like, what has life been like for you, just an individual, just kind of navigating this whole like COVID, time period in life? Like, what has that been like for you, first off?
Yeah, it's definitely been unique, man. I mean, I'm someone that, and as I'm sure as many people can attest that, was running 100 miles an hour, running around like a chicken with his head cut off before COVID hit. And
Absolutely.
then, COVID just forced you to slow down. There was no alternative. You had to sit with it, sit with yourself, your thoughts and anything and everything that came with it. So I would say quarantine and COVID has been just a time of personal growth and development for me. I've definitely been fortunate to still be able to conduct, different seminars and presentations virtually, knowing that many individuals are having tough times, so it's just been, a time where I've been more intentional about reaching out to people, checking on people, making sure they're doing okay with their personal, mental, and emotional health. But it's definitely been unique, and I've been doing some volunteering when I can with the local food bank and doing stuff safely. And also here at the local university at SMU, working with student athletes when I can. But of course, keeping safety is a top priority, but still being able to just, give my most valuable commodity and in anyone's most valuable commodity, and that's your time.
Absolutely.
So that's what I would say, quarantine has been like. And I'm someone that never really watched TV before. So like now I know how to watch TV, just learn how to chill, and I've learned that it's okay to chill. It's okay to not be just always busy or think you have to be doing something at all times. So that's probably the biggest lesson for me thus far.
Yeah, and I think that I agree. I can attest to that with COVID kind of slowing things down for me. It has allowed for me to kind of be more reflective, more than anything. Because when you're sitting around, when you're inside, you just have yourself, really to just kind of sit with. So a lot of ideas come to mind, and I think the biggest thing is, like you said, it's just making that time for people, right? Whether it's family, whether it's just in your professional life, just being more intentional. So I think that I can attest to a lot of what you're speaking on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You have to be kind to yourself because you're the person you can spend the rest of your life with, no matter what. So that's one thing I definitely learned. But yeah, overall, it's been good. It's been a time of just stretching, and in some ways, I mean, just kind of you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable if you
Right.
want to grow. If you want to stretch, if you want to become a better version of yourself. That's a necessary, I guess, evil, so to speak. So I've tried to embrace it as best I can. So, but God's definitely been taking care of me and blessing me. Thankfully, no one that I know or I'm really close to has gotten COVID or suffered any ills from it. And so that's definitely a blessing, especially having parents that are, upper in age and they've been able to stay safe. I mean, they basically go out in hazmat suits, you know what I mean? Get in that way. But
Yeah,
just even
seriously.
still, I mean, just the way God has kept us all safe, I'm definitely thankful for it.
Definitely. Well, just the transition, it's not like, everyone like kind of like wakes up out of bed, rolls out of bed and just becomes a success. I'm more so curious as to, your background, right? You're a Mississippi native. And, for, just for you, just navigating the sports industry, I just wanted to kind of dial it back and get an understanding of, I guess for you, it's coming from Mississippi and having an upbringing. Like, what inspired you, or what drew you to sports in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I guess like any young child or any kid, I had hoop dreams. I worked in football for a number of years, but I grew up with basketball being my favorite sport, and I can still stroke the three. If anybody wants to see the sport, when I step across half court, I'm in range. So watch out. So yeah, I mean, basketball was my first love, and I just wanted to wanted to be a physical therapist. I wanted to be a doctor. I mean, there's so many different things I considered. But it was not until I just got my grad assistantship at Baylor University after I graduated from Ole Miss that I really just kind of just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the development that football brings, particularly in the world of sport. When you see someone come in, and it's not just it's in any sport for that matter, They come in as a college freshman, doing all kind of crazy stuff, and then you see them, they matriculate, the progression, how they're developing, the freshmen that come in after them, the responsibility, the sense of ownership they have. I mean, there's nothing more special than that. So that's why sport, particularly in the collegiate marketplace, has been a passion of mine, just because of the growth and development. I'm a process guy. I really love to see just that's a development over time. So yeah, sports, and like I said, it's one of those things where, like I said, I'm not a big I wasn't a big television guy, but live sports, you know what I mean? If you miss it live, then you miss it. You can see highlights and you can see what happened, but if you didn't see it live, then that's just you kind of miss out on that. And I think it's what makes sports special. And it's one thing, like whether you're in a basketball arena or a football stadium, it's one of the few things in the world that can unite people after one or two common goals, right? I want this team to win. I want that team to win.
Right.
Not about religion, not about race, not about politics. You know what I mean? There's 50,000 things we can disagree on, but if we're in the same venue watching two teams play, chances are you want one team to win, I want the other team to win, and that's all that matters in that specific venue. Mm-hmm. And so sports has the opportunity or the platform to unite, to gratify, to give one shining moments, and to bring people together that probably would never even speak to each other or say hello to each other walking down the street, right? If somebody turn around, give you a high five, pre-COVID, of course. And you're just your best friend for those 60 minutes or whatever that is. And I think that's what makes sports so very special. And so that's what kind of drew me to it.
Yeah, and I like the more so the story that you tell of, first off, having hoop dreams. Like everyone, grew up, having hoop dreams. I mean, me in particular, I was in the same kind of same position, growing up in Baltimore City. Like I said, we're more of a basketball city than anything. Like football is, a lot of people play football, but we grow up like knowing, grow up learning about, Dunbar poets and, Sam Cassell and, Reggie, like all those greats, in the basketball arena, Skip Wise. So we grew up playing a lot of basketball. So we have a lot of, a lot of history within that. However, it just seems like it's funny living in different areas. You kind of see, how sports, in the sense, or how sport brings together different communities. Like it may mean something different, like for example, on the East Coast, right, where basketball is like, is king, right? In the wintertime, it's, depending upon, the high schools, right? You look at, certain Catholic schools, right? It's very, not even just in Catholic schools, just in education in schools in general, like basketball is like king, and it brings a lot of people together. And, me living out in on the West Coast, like they have a different kind of a, community aspect to sports where it goes from, tailgates, more so networking events, and then you come to down here to the South, and it's different, in a sense that it's a religion. Like football is a religion, sports is a religion. Like, I never really, put it into a perspective, but the culture here is sports, whether it's going to a game, whether it's, talking about it at work, like it's ingrained in the DNA, of the culture. So it's amazing to kind of, for me personally, seeing those different, how sport impacts people in different regions, and to come down here, it's like my mind is just I've never experienced anything like it.
Yeah, it's definitely, man. It's definitely religion. I mean, I went to Ole Miss, and so we're best known for the Grove. And one of our, I guess, favorite sayings is, "We may not win the game, but we never lost a party." Right? Because it's a real thing. And
right.
People out there dressed in their Sunday best. And there's tents out there with chandeliers in them. I kid you not. Catering to the tea. I mean, it is a whole different lifestyle out there. So yeah, definitely in the South, man. I mean, that's where it is, man. And that's what it's all about down here. So I mean, you kind of fall into it, you embrace it, you roll with it. But I visited the West Coast, and there could be a 49ers game or something going on, and people just could care less because there's so many different things to do.
Right.
And the weather is, usually really good. So people are at the beach, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you're kind of in these kind of concrete jungles, when all you have are structures and, activities indoors, people typically kind of gravitate towards those. So yeah, that's definitely sports in the South, man.
Absolutely.
Like any other.
And for you, I guess more so like I want to know, how were you able, because like you said, there's so many different things you can do with sport, right? You can, go into the, the physical therapy side of things. You can get into to being a player. You can get into being an agent, etc. How were you able to kind of carve out your niche within the industry, given that there's so many different directions you could have gone in? What was that, first off, how did you do it? And what was that process like for you?
Yeah, man, it was definitely one that, I couldn't have written down because I mean, if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans, right? And he'll show you his. But I would say, for me, it kind of all started, obviously I graduated from Ole Miss and I knew I wanted to get my grad degree, but I didn't know what I really wanted to do with it. I was strength and conditioning coach for a little while, so I dabbled in that, but really just didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I mean, I didn't even know what an athletic director did until my senior year in college. I just didn't know. I wasn't exposed. I didn't watch my first football game until my freshman year in college, right? And
Wow.
like I never grew up a football fan. I just never grew up a fan. So it's amazing how things kind of transpired over time. But one of my favorite quotes says it's by Isaac Newton. It
Mm.
says, "If I've seen further than others, it's by staying upon the shoulders of giants."
Mm.
And I've definitely had some giants in my life, in my career, that have helped me. And so I would say the biggest step, and this is kind of a unique story, but I applied to Baylor University after getting denied from another university I wanted to attend. And it was a huge blessing in disguise that I didn't get that opportunity that I wanted at that time. I get to Baylor University and my mentor, his name's Ty Brown, we ended up writing a book together. He ended up taking me to the room where the gentleman was talking about the same very strategies and tactics I talk about today as an executive coach. And had I not been welcome to that room, had I not been in that venue, had he not taken me by the shoulder and said, "Hey, come with me,"
Mm.
I would not be doing what I'm doing now, right? And so he really had to expose me and see enough within me to say, "Hey, I trust you to hold yourself, in a professional manner in this type of setting," but also trusting me with just the trusting me with his network, right? Trusting me with saying like, "Hey, I've really worked 13 14 years here to cultivate a great network, and I want to share it with you," right? And that's the biggest compliment you can get, because oftentimes as young professionals or even just young people in general, we try to say, okay, what can we offer to other people, and we may not think we can offer them because we don't may not have a lot as far as resources. But when you can make someone look good, when you can represent them well in a positive light, when they can say, "Yeah, that's Ty's guy, or that's Davian's guy, that's Will's guy," that makes them proud, right? And the way we kind of termed it in our book, the blueprint for a successful career, is that you're putting on someone else's jersey. And
Mm.
so the way that works, and if you're familiar with kind of youth sports, I know in Mississippi we had to have sponsors, to get
Yeah.
those jerseys
Oh
made. So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's the thing. So when you're as a professional, you are being sponsored by people, mentors that support you, that love you, that care about you, and everything you do, everywhere you go, wherever you are, you're representing them because essentially you have their jersey on your back. And
Mm.
so it's how you represent them, is how you kind of play when the lights are on and lights are off. It doesn't matter. That's what really makes you who you are. So I would say that, over time, just studying the industry, seeing what the gaps were and saying like, "Hey, I went into this room a few years ago. I heard this guy talking about professional presence and executive conduct, and everybody in the room either didn't look like me or was 30 or 40 years older than me." And I
Mm.
said, there's got to be some kind of middle ground here to help bridge that gap and educate the people who one day want to be sitting in these seats, specifically those that are underserved, underrepresented. And so I'm not particular to any race or gender, but I do want people to have equal opportunity. And what you do with that information is up to you. But I want to present it in a fashion that's digestible and that can help cultivate, new perspectives, new insights, and help you see the best within yourself to go and accomplish your own personal goals.
Yeah, and I think that you touched on a lot, but I think one of the common thing, the thing that really stood out to me was, I think when you said about putting on someone else's jersey, it's like it's not about you at that point, right? And I think that one of the, not I can just admit with even myself, sometimes the ego gets in the way. And that's difficult to kind of, to put the ego aside and say, hey, I'm a representation of not just myself, but other people as well. And when, like you said, when you have someone's network, you're representing, you have access to someone's network, you're representing them as well. And oftentimes I think we, as young professionals, as young people, we just forget about that. How are you able, because that transition, I think that it doesn't just, it's not about just you being in the room and your colleagues saying, "Hey, I want you to come over here." It's more so about, it's a mindset. So how did you get the mindset of like kind of removing the ego to say, okay, I'm able to accept, coaching or accept someone kind of critiquing me, but then also bringing me along and saying, hey, these are the gaps you can stand in, or, these are the ways in which you can help others. Like, how did you make that transition mentally?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I would say, just being honest with you, man, like growing up, I'm from Mississippi, born and raised, and from Grenada particularly. My parents live in Oxford now, but by all accounts, in terms of where we grew up and just the socioeconomic status that we were able to enjoy, I was by all means privileged. And I'm not afraid to admit that. I was a privileged individual growing up. And I didn't realize I was privileged until I got out of it, where I grew up and I looked back and I say, oh, wow, that's why he may not have been able to afford a new pair of shoes, or, able to, or maybe his uniform wasn't, always, pressed and clean, you know what I mean? Because I only saw it from my lens. And so if anybody will tell you anything about what I present, it's all about perspective, how you see things. And I'm very particular about that. I'm very adamant about that, because there was an individual, I won't call his name, but I'll never forget it. I was in 8th grade and we were sitting in class, we got our progress reports, and I'd always, done well academically because I didn't have any worries, right? I had a great home life. I had nothing to do but to study and to make good grades, right? And there was a friend of mine that sat behind me who showed me his progress report. Now, granted, I knew where he lived in one of the roughest neighborhoods, in my city. I knew what he was around: violence, drugs, you name it. He was around it every single night, right? And I turned around, I saw his progress report, and he had all A's on it. I'm like, man, that's awesome, right? And in my mind, I said, you know what? I said to him, I said, man, I bet you can't wait to get home and show your parents. They're gonna be so proud of you and everything you've accomplished. And he just looked down, he looked up, and he said, man, I'm just gonna sign this myself and bring it back like I always do. Wow. Because nobody at my house even cares. And now he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. Right. I mean, for his aptitude and what God has blessed him with in his capacity, he is underachieving by even his own standards, right? And so I don't judge anyone for what they do, where they're at, because I've worked overnight at Walmart. I've rented my apartment out on Airbnb while I was living in it. Right. I've driven Uber. So, no one will ever say that I'm just downplaying anyone's role or responsibility. Right. When you see someone's capacity and their aptitude, and you know what they're capable of, but they don't have the exposure, they don't have the opportunity, they don't have someone pushing them forward toward their purpose and greatness, it definitely hurts your feelings. So that's why I'm so intentional about what I do and why I do it, because I don't want there to be more individuals on my watch that could reach their full potential and maybe go out and help and impact others in a better way than I can by me not fulfilling my own purpose. And so my mindset, the way it was developed, was through that experience, just through the experience of my parents and seeing them go through hardships and their perseverance. And it was also by me being a strength and conditioning coach as a student, and where I got locked out, kicked out, cussed out, choked out, you name it. And it broke me, right? Because I grew up privileged, right? So I didn't have to do certain things, right? But experiences broke me. The recession broke me. Working 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. with an hour commute at Walmart on aisle 4, that broke me, right? So that I developed this anything and everything, will do, can do attitude, right? And in a fast-paced environment like I was working in, the strength and conditioning, it would be to the point where someone would tell you something and you have no clue what they're talking about, but you're walking away and you're figuring out in your mind, right? And so that's what I had to develop. So I would say that my parental background, my upbringing in small town Mississippi in Grenada, and also my work in strength and conditioning helped develop that mindset of just being aware of opportunities, being aware of your surroundings, being aware of where people are coming from, and how you can meet them where they are.
Yeah, and I think that that was something that I wanted to kind of touch on, because I was watching in preparation for this. I was watching your you had did a seminar. You were at a seminar at Florida State, and I was just watching, how you were presenting some of the things that you were talking about, and you mentioned, driving Uber and using your place as an Airbnb, and working at Walmart. For me, like, a lot of people will, not a lot of successful people will actually talk about those things, like talk about the points or moments that really, really broke you. And I think that, when you know yourself, what I'm learning just in life, when you know yourself, when you know yourself, those times, those hard periods aren't, they aren't the end all be all, right? But when you don't know yourself and you don't know what you're truly, what your real purpose is and what God has planned for you, those things could be the end of the world. Yeah. So how did you, during those times, like, how did you, how did you still have like a belief, within yourself during those times, because for some people are still, who may be in those places, right? They may not know how to get out of those places. Like, how are you able to, like still kind of like have a perseverance or a desire, even in the midst of those times when you were, working in Walmart and going through those moments?
It's taught me a lot of life lessons. I mean, you learn how people operate. For me, I knew in that point in time, it was just a point in time where it was kind of a stopgap for me. It was kind of a means, to move into the next level. But there are plenty of wonderful people that work there to this day, and I go back and I see them.
Mm.
Some working overnight, some working the day shift. And if not for those people, I wouldn't be who I am, right? And so I don't see them any differently. I'm at to the point, if I had to go back right now, I would go back happily, right? Because I'm not above that, in any shape, form, or fashion. And I would say what helped me through the process was my parents, because they worked so hard to give me such a great life and great upbringing when I was growing up that I didn't want to let them down. I wanted to be able to give back to them. I want to be able to support them. I never wanted them to be able to go without. And I'll even tell you this story, just to be completely frank with you. It was December of 2016. I was off for a couple of weeks from work. My parents were experiencing financial hardships. And I had been sitting on this idea about executive presence, executive image for about 2 years, not doing anything with it. And I finally just said, like, hey, I know things are not kind of rough right now. My dad works in construction, so it gets rough around the wintertime.
Yeah.
So I went to the computer and I started working on this presentation. I said, Mom, I got an idea, right? I said, I got an idea. I think it's going to work. I'm going to be able to help people. And if I can make some extra income from it, I'll be able to send it home and help you guys out. And lo and behold, I mean, that original presentation that I presented now over 130 times is still on my mom's computer, just a black and white, just a white, background with the black letters. It's still there.
Wow.
But that came from hardship. And the other side of it, the reason I even completed my book with my mentor's help, Ty Brown, is because I started the book, and they say if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? And so my English teacher inspired me in 10th grade. She said, Will, you're a writer, you have a penchant for writing.
Wow.
And that was a really, really transformational moment in my life. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is a guy named Richard Fox. He's from Grenada, Mississippi. He was working in Grenada Parks and Rec. And one day I was in the bank doing a business transaction for my dad. And again, this is exposure, right? My dad's an entrepreneur, had his own business. So how many young Black males can say they were doing a business transaction for their dad, right? I was writing checks when I was 5 years old, because he taught me how to do that, right? Because I was exposed to it, not because I'm better than anyone, because I was exposed, right? And so many other populations are exposed to things that we don't see until later on in life. And so that's why I say I was privileged. That's why I say I was privileged, and I know I was. But the biggest thing was my English teacher saying, hey, you have this gift, right? That was in 10th grade as a sophomore. The other piece of it was being in that bank that day and Mr. Fox coming in, and he heard me talking to the teller, and he leaned over and leaned back. He said, Will Baggett, that you? I said, yes, sir. He said, son, you have a powerful voice and a way with words. One day you're going to use your voice to help people. I was 14 years old. I'll never forget that. Regions Bank, Grenada, Mississippi. I'll never forget that. And so it's all about people being able to speak life into you. And so those people spoke life into me. And I felt it was incumbent on me to speak life into other people, throughout my life. And so that's what kept me persevering, is just those words. But I would also say that I had a lot of help. And I've never mentioned this on a podcast or on air before, but there was a time when I was in Atlanta, Georgia. I was working full time, but wasn't making much money and wasn't, being, I guess, the best steward of my resources either. And at the time, me and my girlfriend, we were still up at the time, but I went to the mailbox and I was thinking like, man, I need to drive Uber this weekend so I can help make ends meet, because I was kind of low on cash, but I didn't have any gas. And so just, as a routine, I was sitting in that parking spot right in front of my apartments. I went to the mailbox, and in there was a card from my girlfriend with $40 in it. And she said, I was just thinking about you. And that $40 is what enabled me to drive Uber that weekend and to help make some money until I got paid the next Tuesday. I wouldn't know if I would have made it through the weekend because I didn't have any money. And so I had a lot of help. And her name's Brianna Ford. We've been off and on for a number of years, and kind of on a break right now as I work to develop myself personally. I know this is more than what you asked for.
No,
I would be remiss if I didn't mention and shout her out. as one of the cornerstones and one of the best things that's ever happened to me. So Brianna, if you're listening, baby girl, I appreciate you. And that's what has helped me get to where I am. Those people, along with my parents, but I definitely don't want to leave Brianna out for everything she's done for me, because she's helped me in some of my lowest moments that people would have never even imagined. And I think we have to be vulnerable enough to tell people that, to give people their flowers, and so that when they can smell them, while they can smell them, but also to let people know that, we all go through things. We all need people. We all need community. We all need support. And I would say I have one of the strongest support systems in the country, as you hopefully can tell.
Yeah, just from your dad to Ty Brown to Brianna Ford. I mean, it just seems like your support system is everything, because without it, where would you be? But one of the things you mentioned, you were sitting on the idea of emerging executives or exec image for 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us sit on ideas. I've sat personally. I can attest to this. I've sat on. I've sat on having a podcast for a very long time, because that's I was just always attracted to media. I remember being in high school and going to and I didn't really pay attention to it in the beginning, but I remember going to like one of my class deans and saying, hey, like, wouldn't it be cool to have like a radio station here, where like people can kind of like, we can just talk to people, and it was a fleeting idea. And then I think as time went on, even when I got to Dallas, I started to really like, become more obsessed with sports and media and content, but didn't really execute, didn't really, say, okay, I had these ideas, I'm going to bring them to life. What was it, I guess, what was the transition, or what was the point where, where you were sitting on an idea for 2 years, how were you able to execute? Like, what was the day, what was the time period you were like, okay, this is not just going to be an idea, I'm going to bring this to life?
Yeah. No, it was, it was honestly, so the genesis of the idea I mentioned being in my parents' living room in 2016, but the actual execution of it is I was living in Atlanta at the time. I was just at home on break in Mississippi, but there was a pastor, there is a pastor named Onesimus Williams,
Right.
and he has his own church called Believer's Example in Atlanta, Georgia now. But he would always sit in the back of the church, and he would sometimes go up and pray and preach at times. And he just has a special gift. And me and him became friends. And he said, you know what? You're different. He said, most people are like A, B, and C. You all the way over here like J or like M or like P or something like that.
Right.
Like, what I mean? It's just, that's just, how I was raised, man, just to, walk right, walk light and talk right. But so we became good friends, man. And he ended up designing my book cover for me. And helping me, through that process, because I couldn't afford professional services to design a book cover. I mean, I was driving an Uber and, trying to make ends meet. I couldn't afford a book cover design, right? Designer. And he designed my book cover for me. But also I called him, I was sitting in a parking lot on Marietta Street in Atlanta, in 2017, in January. I said, man, I got an idea. So I've been thinking about this executive image thing. I think it's going to work. Like, I got these ideas and these scenarios I can present. And said, can you help me design like a one-sheeter and kind of help me do a slide deck and all this kind of stuff? And sure enough, he did it for little to nothing, right? And so once I got to a point where I had the resources to support myself, I started making monthly donations to his church as a repayment to him, because I could never afford him at the time when I needed him the most. Right. So Onesimus, if you're not listening, buddy, like this one's for you. But that was someone that helped me tremendously. Also, the headshot I've been using for probably like 4 or 5 years now, Miss Rose Lee, she took my headshots for me for free. Professional photographer in Atlanta, and she took my photography, my pictures for me for free.
Wow.
And I've been using those resources, that book and those pictures she took of me for the last 5 or 6 years, to help build my brand and my platform.
Right.
But again, I had to have people that believed in my vision and not think I was getting overnight. And trust me, I took care of her on the back end when I was able to, because I don't believe in getting stuff for free. I believe in, people have a skill. If they have a talent, you pay them accordingly, And so, but at the same time, I knew that these were good-hearted people and they knew I would be good for it, and they invested in me. And so when I got an opportunity, I paid them back. And I think this came from my dad just always telling me my grandmother was rich. And I didn't know what he meant by that at the time. My grandmother didn't have a lot of financial resources, right? But then he asked me one day, he said, excuse me, he said, Lil Will, he said, have you ever seen your grandmother go without anything? I said, no. He said, she's rich in relationships. She's rich in relationships. there would be people bringing her food and feminine products all throughout the week, just bringing her stuff
Wow.
because she never went without anything. You know, she was the first lady of the church. She treated people the right way. So when she needed help, people were there for her. And so when I needed help to get this thing off the ground, those people, the ones I've mentioned, from my parents to Coach Kaz, to my English teacher, Miss Leverett, to Brianna, to all these different people, to, you know, these are the people, Miss Rose, Onesimus, these are the people that helped me the most, that I never paid a dime to, so to
Mm.
speak, in the moment when I needed them the most. On the back end, you know, what have you, you know, that's whatever. But in the moment I needed them the most, they believed in me, they believed in my vision, they believed that, you know, that they believed that their investment in their gift to me, they knew they would be blessed for it, you know, and they didn't expect anything as far as reciprocation. And
Mm.
that's when your greatest blessings come. When you do things out of kindness of your heart. And
Mm.
that's the kind of people I was trying to surround myself with, from whether it's my family to my girlfriend, what have you. I want those kind of people around me.
Mm.
And that's what I try to you know, exude as well, because, you know, there's no substitute for kindness and care and consideration of other people.
Yeah, and I think that you touched on something. Is it's that you just being who you are as a person allow for others to say, hey, I'm gonna make this sacrifice. You didn't. I think oftentimes when we try to build relationships with people, and I think you hinted to this in your in the conference and when you were speaking, is that we often think that when we're building relationships that we have to reach out to people if we need something, or needing something is a means to reaching out. It could just be something as simple as it could be a Tuesday, hey, I know I know we haven't spoken in a while, just wanted to see how's everything going with you. Just those little things. And that's something that my even you speak to your parents and how influential they are. My parents were very influential in my upbringing, especially my dad, because my dad was always the person who, and if he's listening, shout out to my dad, as well as my mom. But my dad really taught me this aspect of, when you go into places, or when if it's family or anyone, ask them how they're doing first. See how they're doing. Don't just go and just say like, hey, I need this, or request these things first. Address people, because these are people at the end of the day. You never know what they could be going through or how their day is. At least engage someone, say, how are you doing? How was your day first? Before you get into to asking for things. And that's the because he would get on me and my sisters, and just say like, y'all, when we were kids, we didn't really understand this. But as I get older, I realize, and, building relationships with other people, not even just in the industry, but just people that are close to me that have had, a tremendous impact in my own personal development.
Mhm.
Um, that's something I continue to work at. I'm not the best at it, and I'm not going to sit up here and say that I'm an expert at relationships, right? I still have my shortcomings, but I think that you hit on something so special. It's just being kind, being a kind person, being who you are will allow for you to be blessed in ways you can never imagine.
Mhm.
So I think that that's extremely important.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. I mean, it's a lost art. You know, you talk about something, I talk about, and that's the thing, man. It's like there's nothing new under the sun. You know, it says in Ecclesiastes, right? So what I do is nothing that's brand new. It's just the packaging, the product, the placement, and the passion behind it. You know, that's the only difference. So I'm very, very aware and cognizant of what I do. That it's not something I created, right? It's just something I kind of cultivated and made my own. But that's one of the core things I teach. It says, don't just reach out to people when you need something,
Mm.
right? Because like you said, people are human. So you get right on that, man. So, I could, you can stand in for our next gig, man, if you want, man, because I mean, these things are
Yeah.
all, they're all tried and true strategies. I mean, social media, Zoom, the things we use now are resources, but we have to keep our eye on the source and
Mm.
what has allowed us to do these things. And because business deals, transactions all happened before social media was even created, right?
Absolutely.
All these things happened before social media just gave it, it was more of a conduit, a medium to make things more easy. But a like and story watch doesn't equal a relationship, right? You have to really touch people, touch base with people, really get to their hearts and minds, and know what their favorite candy is,
Right.
so you can really address those types of needs. And so that's something that I have learned from my mother and father, and also Brianna. These, like, those people, that they really just will get to know who you are and what you are about, and they will act on those things, right? And so they have taught me, so much, because obviously, yeah, you have this, I guess, so-called worldly success, but what are the gaps, right? How can you become a better person? And I say this, and I'm using a lot of biblical references purposely, but even with Nebuchadnezzar, he had a golden statue in Daniel, right?
Mm,
And he had a golden statue created because he wanted people to worship that golden statue, right?
mm,
And so, how many of us have created these auras of these statues of what we want people to appreciate and to think about us without really getting and seeing that this is a hollow, this is hollow, this is just, you know what I mean? It's coding, right?
mm.
You can buy gold paint at the store, you know what I
Absolutely.
mean? Or it's like a Trojan horse, you know what I mean? And so that's what I'm just really focused on now, is just making sure that the exterior, the interior, the executive image, when I talk about, the executive image is only a reflection of who you are on the inside. That's what that's about. It's not about, because I can teach you how to dress, I can teach you how to hold your hands, how to stand, how to speak. That's easy. But if you're not a good person, if you're not, truly committed to developing other people and caring for other people in a fashion that is favorable, and is satisfactory to God, then you're not going to have success that lasts for a very long time. It's at some point it's going to catch up with you.
Mm,
And so that's what I've learned. And so I've went not so much like pre-COVID,
right.
my presentation was very body language focused and do this, stand like this, talk like this. But I've since, kind of adjusted it, for the times we're living in, to really just, address the hearts and the minds and perceptions, of who we are as people. And I think, if we get the inside right, if we get the interior right, the exterior will just be a reflection, and just, the interior will shine through. And
Mm.
that's what makes you just the best person, best professional, husband, father, sister, brother, cousin, auntie, uncle, wife you can be. And so that's the focus now. That's what I'm really intent on. And so I kind of get excited about it, talking about it, because I've been doing this one way for so long, but now I'm on just kind of a different journey of kind of my own self-discovery, and I have a platform to share it. And so I don't want to miss this opportunity or mishandle, the opportunities God has given me and the purpose for which, he's put me in this position for such a time as this.
Man, I think that that blew me away because for two things. One, I think that the times that we're living in now, image is, it's like everything. We get so caught up in image, so much so. Like I like, even when I have conversations with Pearl about, how things look, and everything, I'm all, it's like, it's always we get so caught up. Not, I can say we, but I'm gonna speak to myself on this one, right? Personally, I get so caught up in, how, people portray themselves on social media, what they're doing, but not knowing. And Pearl always tells me, but you never know how that person is on the inside. You never know what that person is dealing with. And I'm like, you're right, I don't know, but I still see this image,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I think what you touched on is which was is crucial, because so much, even during this time with COVID, right? It's even, I think it's even enhanced.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's even enhanced, where I think that's we get so caught up in the exterior that we neglect ourselves. And I've gotten so caught up in that, to the point where I sometimes forget to appreciate the now, appreciate the
Yep.
times in which you prayed for.
Yep.
Like these times, like when we were, offline, we were talking about, how, I'm a part of the, the Dallas Cowboys inaugural, UNT MBA program, right? I would have never imagined, what, when I was, in Baltimore, back in, 2017, when I was, catching the train, going to work, walking to work, not having a lot of money, not being, I always was like, man, I wish I would have, like, went the route that some of my peers would have went, into, working for a bank, or, these jobs that had more financial stability. But I think that, as I'm, like you said, like, another thing that was so true is, God has, and I agree with you, and I can speak to it myself. God has blessed me with a platform and an opportunity as well to share this, right? And I don't want to take it, for granted, because, I think oftentimes I get so caught up in the fact that, yes, I have a podcast, but oftentimes, it's okay to give of myself and share more of myself. And I think that you've kind of set that tone. I appreciate, how you've been so open and candid, because, it has allowed for me to, highlight, how, it's not all about an image, right? And to get away from that and to appreciate who you are as a person, truly, on the inside, but then also to not wasting what God has, the talent or the opportunity that God has provided you. I think that oftentimes when we want or we wish that we had a different situation, it's a slap in the face of God, or it's more of a, you're basically saying that what God has blessed you with is not enough, when it is, when it in all actuality it is. But we get so caught up in these images and what everyone else is doing, especially young professionals. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've come across a lot of people who deal with that. How do you kind of, and I don't know if I'm like, I don't know if I'm giving away a lot of things, but how can you speak to like getting away from like the image and more so, bring it to light, like who the person really is on the inside? Like, how do you get professionals, young people to really get that message or really understand that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, first, I'd be remiss to not, one, thank you for stepping out on your calling to have this opportunity, because I would say this is probably the most open I've ever been, on a podcast. And the people that create podcasts, I mean, I think are some of the most humble individuals, in the world, because you're literally sitting here listening to someone talk about themselves,
Right.
for an extended amount of time on multiple
Absolutely.
occasions. When the average person has a really short attention span, and
Yep.
you're able to lock in and like intentionally reach out to people to hear their stories and put them out there. So I think for me, like that is, super impressive. That is super impressive that you have that ability and that patience, to do that, for other people. So let me first commend you on that, because I am in a season now where I need to be able to speak openly and
Mm.
not so much about, what I do. And I think, and the questions you have asked have, really made me dig deeper and share more than I typically would on different platforms. So just make sure, man, you be kind to yourself, man. You appreciate yourself, because you're doing a great work, and this is therapeutic, for me, and I'm hoping it's blessing someone else out there. But to answer your question, I would say one of the things I ask is, what does it feel like to be on the other side of you?
Mm.
Like if you met yourself right now, if you were to come up and meet yourself, knowing how you are with people, knowing
Right.
how you are with relationships, following up, your attention span, your engagement, the questions you ask, how much you care about people, if you talk about yourself too much, like what would it feel like to meet yourself? Would you be someone you want to build a relationship with if you met yourself? Right. And I think you have to ask those types of questions to get people to really think, okay, what are some of my flaws? Like, do I, really pay attention to people? Do I follow up? Do I follow through? Do I check in on people when I don't want anything? Right. So what are some of these gaps or flaws that I can improve upon? So I think it's really just getting them to dive deep and also think about, you know, Maya Angelou's quote: people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I
Mm.
asked the question, I said, think of someone in your life that makes you feel like you're the most important person in the world. Like
Mm.
they're locked in with you, they're engaged with you. I mean, they're locked in. Like they just are so invested in who you are as a person. They don't care what you do. You could be on the road selling watermelons on the side of the road. They would still be invested and they still care about you. Who is that person? Who comes to mind?
Mm.
Okay. And then I asked them, said, who are you that person to?
Mm.
Who would call your name? If I asked someone else the same exact question, who would call your name?
Mm.
And if you can't think of anyone, then we have work to do, right? And so you also have to think about, who is on your board of directors, who is influencing you, right? Because the people you spend the most time with, the people you engage with the most, those are the people that are going to help shape your future. They're going to help shape and cultivate your mindset, right? So I think you really have to understand that as well, your surroundings, because I think Nipsey is credited with saying, if you look around your people, you look around your circle, you look around your circle of friends, and if you don't get inspired, you don't have a circle, my friend, you have a cage,
Mm.
right? So you have to think about those things as well. So I really just try to ask a lot of in-depth questions to make them really think about, okay, who are you internally? I know what your goals and ambitions are. You want to go achieve this and achieve that. But there's this thing called rival fallacy that happens to a lot of people.
Mm.
And I've been a victim of it, to be honest with you, to say, when I get this, when I get this job, when I get this amount of money, this house, this car, this spouse, this opportunity, I'll be happy. And so what I've had to find, I'm still working on it, is that happiness is where you are or nowhere at all, right? You really have to find that. And that is difficult, right? Because if you continue to just kind of chase that, just kind of, chase that, get on that hamster wheel trying to chase it and find it, you'll never be truly happy. So that's called rival fallacy, is when I get here, then I'll be happy. And, it's just not the case, because I've been broke and I've had a lot of resources, but there have been times when I say, like, hey, no matter what state I was in, I had to learn to be content, right? As it says in the Bible. And more importantly, you could be sitting in your house, you could have just hit the lottery for $1 million, but if you don't have anyone to share it with,
mm,
anyone to serve, anyone to bless with it, then what is life,
mm.
right? What is life really all about? And so I have to ask questions to other people to want to get their perspectives, but also remind myself to stay grounded in who I am and who I'm becoming even in this season.
Yeah, and I think that that's so important, and I'm glad that you brought to light that the term rival fallacy, because it's, I think that we often get so caught up in you know how we portray ourselves and who we really are. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And and
Hmm.
and, and, and it's never enough. Like it's you can never get enough things. Like you said, you've been broke before, you've had it. Like it's I think that oftentimes we forget to be content with ourselves and content with what we have. Not saying that we're not ambitious and we don't desire more. We don't want to progress in a positive direction, but we also have to appreciate. And I think that I'm learning that now more than anything, because I just think that, like, you know being in school, having my own apartment, having my own car, having all these different responsibilities that I didn't necessarily have maybe a couple of years ago. Whereas when I didn't have them, I was like, oh, I can't, like, when I get this, when I make this amount of money, I can do this, I can, I think that we always think that it's a when I've always kind of had the mindset, and I think the beauty of having these types of conversations is that I can kind of relearn, or kind of say, okay, this way of thinking isn't working, and I'm hearing it from someone else, I'm hearing it from someone who's actually experienced. Okay, how can I adapt? And it's not going to happen overnight, and you got to give yourself grace. And I think that that's one of the most difficult things that I think, from what I'm experiencing, just even with myself, is just giving myself grace.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't do that. And I think that for you, I know you've kind of touched on it a bit about the mistakes you probably made in relationships, and just maybe things you might have fallen short on, but you were able to give yourself grace. Like, how were you able to kind of acknowledge what your shortcomings, and acknowledge the decisions, or things that you might have made, and you're like, okay, I probably shouldn't have did that.
Yeah.
How do you acknowledge that but not let it destroy you, and not let it get you so down that you don't remain hopeful and optimistic for the future self, or who you are meant to be? Like, how do you not let that break you down?
Yeah, man. It's a gift and a curse, because I've been on both sides of that. I've been to the point where it has broken me down,
Mm,
and it has not been, too far in history where this has happened. And so I think just having, again, a support system, and being able to lean on God and lean on your faith, easier said than done, right? Because you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it, but He's definitely there, and He's definitely with us to sustain us and to help us grow. And so I would say the biggest thing, man, that helped me is I had to really, I really had to learn and to really just dial in, to really just kind of go back and understand, okay, why did I take a particular course of action?
mm,
Why did I do something? What led to that? Was it an insecurity? Was it just a bad decision? Was it selfishness? What were the different antecedents that led to that ultimate decision? And I think, unpacking those things are the most important, because if you just look at the action itself and you don't look what led up to the action or the decision, then you're missing the mark, and it can repeat itself, right? And I've done that as well. And so what I've had to learn how to do is to just dial back and say, okay, for instance, like, having the financial struggles when the recession hit, when my parents weren't doing well, I was a freshman in college, having to figure stuff out, working overnight, doing Airbnb, doing Uber. I became obsessed with never being broke again, right?
mm,
Not being broke. I became obsessed with it, to
mm,
the point where I put some things on the back burner, or put something, or didn't prioritize some things and some people that ultimately cost me in some different ways, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, if I just do this, I just grind, and then not thinking about, hey, if I just prioritize this relationship, or this person, or my faith, or developing myself, all those stuff will flow very easily,
mm.
right? Rather than just trying to force it and just having this singular focus without being a complete and total person with physical, emotional, spiritual wellness, not having that full cycle complete, because, I was physically good and I was just grinding, I was just going, but at what cost? And so I think you have to understand what the future costs of current decisions are, and what is taking what is taking precedent and what's not. Because when you're multitasking, and obviously we all have different things going on, like, family, life, personal, professional, what have you. But when you're multitasking, so to speak, and I say multitasking intentionally, you can never truly multitask. You're doing one thing at a really high level, you're doing another thing at a probably a much poorer level, right? So
Mm.
it's not no true way to really multitask, right? When it comes to things that are very important to you. And so I would say that I've had to learn to be able to step back and say, okay, what has led to this? What if it was something that I went through or something I experienced when I was 7, 8, 9 years old or what have you, some conversation I had, right? When I was in Walmart in, I think it was 2013, when someone took my, oh, I'm sorry, it was 2009, when a young lady took my cart when I was working overnight and slammed it against the aisle because it was in her way and all my stuff fell off, right? I never wanted to experience that again. So I said, you know what, no one's ever gonna see me in that position again where I'm just defined by a cart with some ketchup and salad dressing on it, where they can just throw it against the wall and I can't say anything
Right.
because my livelihood is dependent on this job here, right? And so that's what those kind of things you have to unpack within yourself. Like, what have I experienced, right? What are these kind of, mini traumas, so to speak, and that have affected me? And I think you have to be real with yourself and be able to talk those things through, with other people. And they can help, remind you of who you are and remind you that you are not your mistakes and help you give yourself grace. Because sometimes when you're just talking to yourself, it may not always be positive, right? So you need people to speak life into you.
Mm.
But in order to have that, you will have to have invested in other people before these things happen, before you have these hardships. And so that way that you've made deposits and you're not just trying to make a withdrawal and end up with having insufficient, funds or friends or family because you haven't, made deposits into those relationships. So
Mm.
that's what I would say, man. That's
Mm.
what I would kind of speak to in that regard.
Yeah, because we don't look at, I think that, like, even myself, I often get, you know and similar to you, having those, like, I remember, in my first job, working as a community organizer.
Mhm.
It'd be times when we didn't get paid. It'd be times where, you gotta, use your last, or, like, it'd be times where I know that, and the thing is that we fail to realize that even in our own struggles, we're still blessed in a sense.
Mhm.
Not even in a sense, but we are blessed. And I think that in those times, it seems like everything. But when you go through those times, when you have those traumas of where, you gotta, me, I had to deal with, people, having cars and just like having more independence. And I didn't have that because I was, when I graduated college, I was, the first year I was living with my mom and helping out my mom. And I was like, man, like, why was I in this position? So when I, was in that, when I was, going through that time, I get, as fast forward to now, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna ever feel like that again. Like you said, I'm in that. And the funny thing is that you are, I'm not saying you far along, but I'm saying, your wisdom, from you experiencing that, you're a little more enlightened. Whereas though me, I'm kind of going through that phase of like, okay, like I'm trying to not overcompensate, but I'm at a
Mhm.
point now. I'm doing well in my career. I mean, I'm getting recognized. I'm winning. Like 2020 was. I mean, for some it was tough, but for me on a professional level, just at work, I was able to succeed a lot. I was able to do deals, etc. I won top rookie and won best partnership, and from that I was able to I was able to to purchase things, items, materials, and I think where I'm at now is that I'm similar to what you're saying, where I'm gonna buy all these things. I'm trying to make as much as I can, so I don't feel like how I felt in 2017, or I don't feel like how I felt when when I first moved to Dallas, and it wasn't I didn't have all these things I have now. Um, it's hard because it's like I think it's difficult because you think that, or I think that that's more important than, like you said, those personal deposits.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oftentimes, it's so easy to get caught up with, I want to make as much as I want to, I want these materials, I want these shoes, I want this car, I want to, have this, side business so I can do XYZ, when it's really all about more so the people that you invest in. I'm glad that you brought this up because I think that that's something that I personally struggle with. And I know a lot of people
Mhm.
are in that same lane where they don't make those personal deposits. And when stuff hit the fan or they hit a roadblock, they get down on themselves. But there's no one to say, there's no one that they can call and say, hey, like, I'm going through this, and they can like really re-energize and recharge them. You know what I mean? Like the mindset has to shift is what I'm saying.
It does. It absolutely does, man. And I think, it comes to material things. It's like, before you buy something, one, can I buy it twice? That's one
Right.
thing. You can't buy it twice, you can't afford it.
Right.
And two is just like, if I didn't show anybody this, if I locked it in my garage, if I locked it in the dresser for 3 months, if no one ever saw it, but I'd still be happy with the purchase. And if you say yes to all those things and your bills are paid,
Yeah.
by all means, go for it. You know what I mean? Go for it. Go get what you want, right?
Right.
I know a guy that has like over 300 pairs of Jordans.
Right.
Paid for, cars paid for, kids are taken care of, and he ain't missed a meal.
Right.
You do what makes you happy. You know what I mean? And so I think those are things. I mean, we can't necessarily judge people for what they do, what they buy, if they have other things taken care of.
Absolutely.
And so we have to just do things that that make us happy, regardless of who may see them, appreciate them. Because you go buy a new car or something like that, and then 3 months from now you can't make the note on it. Well, people are telling you nice car and everything. I'm not paying that note for you.
Right.
Like, how nice was it really to you? You know what I mean? You want to help me out? So you really got to do things for you. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I one of the things that you touched on in your speaking engagement I thought was really powerful was your affiliation with
I'm listening.
your affiliation with the college football playoff and IMG. Like those are things that you do in a sense, right? But they don't define you.
Right.
How did you differentiate, or how did for you, like how did you not let those things define you? Because I think that for a lot of young people, it's all about a title, or I want to work for this company, or I want to, because I want that LinkedIn update to look a certain way, and I wanted people to I want the spotlight to be on me, but it's not really who they are. It's just a reflection of what what they do. How are you able to separate? How are you able to decipher between, okay, I'm a part of these these organizations and companies as a professional, but that's not who I am, and that's not that's not all of me, that doesn't define me. How are you able to make that how to split the two?
And to be honest with you, that's the biggest thing I struggle with. I mean, I honestly did. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, oh, yeah, just do this and do this, be true to yourself. No, I was literally caught up and wrapped up into, things I was doing. And then especially in COVID, like kind of shut a lot of things down, because pre-COVID, I was traveling everywhere. I mean, I was at the top of my game, and just, things just changed all of a sudden, right? And so I still to this day sometimes struggle with identity. You know what I mean? I still struggle with that at times. So I'm not going to, gonna smooth, just glaze over that. But I think just from the help of my parents, my mentors, whom I mentioned, and also Brianna, who I talked about, they really have helped challenge me in terms of who you are, who you really represent, like whose you are, ultimately. Because prior to working in any of these places, I was Will Baggett, right? And after I'm working with these places or these organizations, I'm still going to be myself. And I think, one thing we have to realize is we can't be tied to the crest on our chest, so to speak. You know what I mean? That logo, because there's this concept I learned from a guy named Andy Dolich. It's called LOL. And it happens a lot in life and in career development. He talked about loss of logo, right? So you lose that logo, how do people treat you? I went from, I maybe say I'm at this place, from IMG, now I'm working at Banana Tech. You know what I mean? But I'm still the same person, but people may not be treating me the same way. And so that happened to me, I think, when I was working at IMG, but I was working on the apparel side. And so I left my business cards with some gentlemen one time at a conference, came back 10 minutes later, the gentlemen were gone from the table. My business cards were still laying there, right? Then later started working with the CFP, never found a business card laying around anywhere, right? Because of the logo. But thankfully, I had cultivated some things on the side with, having wrote the book and having done these speaking opportunities and these programming opportunities, to where I had something to fall back on. And these are things that, are passion projects for me that no one can take away from me, right? Because I can't pass down these organizations to, my children one day. And not that you said they even want to do anything with sports, right? So I can't even assume that. And so I think, if I make a few dollars or something from book royalties or what have you, one day that'll be in their name, you know what I mean? And if they ever want to learn how to do public speaking, I can teach them that. I can teach that skill, because it's not something they're going to teach you so to speak, or really cultivating you in a classroom setting. And that's going to transcend, necessarily want to do what I do exactly, but learning how to communicate effectively will serve them in any aspect of their lives, right? And so I think about this legacy that comes with it, and it's just like, what can you pass down? Because it's not what you leave to people; it's what you leave in people. And I think that's the biggest thing we have to really realize. It's not what you leave to them, it's what you leave in them. Because if you leave an idiot or a fool with 500K, it'll be gone in 6 months to a year, right? It'll be gone just like that. And so that's what I've really had to learn to appreciate, and also that I'm privileged because I'm a fifth generation entrepreneur, so to speak. My grandfather had his own business. My dad had his own business. My two brothers have their own businesses, and so I'm fifth generation.
Mm.
And so had I not been exposed to that, had I had those opportunities, had I not seen my dad never bow down or never just nod his head to someone that didn't look like him, just because they had a different position, that we got a different title, they looked a different way, I never saw him bow his head to anybody and have to say, yes, yes, or master, or anything like that, right?
Mm.
And so that gives you a different perspective on life that a lot of my friends and counterparts did not have the same opportunity to see. And so if they can see me the way that I saw my father and my brothers and my grandfather, even for if it's just an hour, an hour of time, they know it's possible, right? And that's the thing, is just knowing what's possible. And for me, I had to go before I started doing what I was doing. I went to go see the gatekeepers. I mean, I went to go see the people that were doing it at a really high level, that were doing it better than I was, right? And I think that was the biggest thing, is just being able to pay homage to people that do things better than you do, but ultimately being able to separate, who you are from what you do, because those things can get so intertwined that you can forget, who you are. You really can. And so, the identity is something that I have struggled with, because, you think about this achievement, go, 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 go. And then when you decide to make a change, you have to be really, ready what comes with that. You mean the calls, the emails, may not come the way they used to, but thankfully I've been able to see, like, hey, I can stand on my own 2 feet. Like, I don't need a brand or a logo to help me get these opportunities. You know what I mean? And so that's what I think has been the most gratifying and most rewarding overall. And so, yeah, that's kind of what it is. But it's definitely something that is, for me, is a daily kind of reminder and a daily obstacle I have to overcome, and remind myself of who I was created to be, and what my purpose ultimately is. And I know for a fact that, me being here with you right now, and, if I had not stepped out to do what I do, I mean, we're not having this conversation, right? If Mr. Fox had not told me to do something with my voice one day, I'm not here. Miss Leverett had not told me to use my writing ability to write and inspire one day, would not be here. Mom and dad didn't tell me, hey, you got it. What I mean, your last name's Baggett. You know what I mean? This is what we do. This is who we are, right? If Brianna didn't send me that $40, didn't stand beside me, in some of my darkest moments, you know what I mean, then I'm not here right now,
Mm.
right? So that's what I have to remember and realize, is that no matter what I do, what I gain, lose, transition from, the people that are around me, that have supported me from day one, that knew me before any of these things were an option, were a resource, were an opportunity, those are the people that are going to be with me after the fact. And so this experience, this quarantine, this COVID, has really taught me that, and really showed me that more than ever.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that up because even in myself, I think that with me, launching a joint podcast,
Mhm.
having, I write, have my own blog, and I love writing. It's so funny that you talk about, your love for writing, because I've always had a love for writing, but I was very introverted person. Like I have notebooks and things like that, and had to take, similar to, kind of how, Brianna has been that voice, and that kind of that person that stands in those gaps in the darkest times. It was Pearl who was like, why don't you have all these, these notebooks full of writings? Why don't you why don't you start a blog? Why don't you like share? Why don't you share what, your story? Share,
Mhm.
share, open up, and be more open to people, because you never know what people could be going through. I mean, I think that oftentimes in the beginning I was kind of doing it to kind of, not doing it for the sake of to hear people's reactions. But I was just so in awe of just, how people, were doing. But then after, as time went on, I realized that it's not about the reaction. It's not about, about the people. It's this. I love to write. This is what I love to. I love to write, and I love to do things like this. And I think that oftentimes, like you said, loss of logo. Like, what would I be? What, I'm still a person of value
Mhm.
outside of, the company that I work for, or, because I think that oftentimes I think that when we get so caught up in the logo and who we work for and things like that, like even with you, I'm not even gonna lie, like I was like, wow, this guy is, he's through college football playoff and IMG, like wow, this guy worked in sports and I want to work in sports well. But I think that this conversation has taught me that, it's not about those logos or titles or companies. It's more about the individual, because that person is, the value is endless. You might think, you can get caught up in your value and what, your value towards a certain, logo or brand, when, you look at where you're at now, when you have your book and your speaking engagements and how you can touch so many people with your story. It's like it's like, and it's effortless. It doesn't even seem like work. You know what I mean? Because it's something that you naturally do. So I think that that's a lot of, a lot of young professionals can kind of, use that piece of wisdom. And you've been dropping gems all episode, but that piece of understanding that what are you about the logo? Like, who are you? And are you okay with that person? And if not, like, how can you, bring that person to the light as well? We're not saying neglect, because people got to eat, people got to pay their
Yeah,
bills and do what they got to
absolutely.
do. But at the same time, don't dim your light on who you really are and things that you're interested in.
Yeah, no, without question, man. I mean, I think, one of my favorite quotes is, well, a couple actually, how you do anything is how you do everything. One
Mm,
of my favorite quotes. Another one, talks about price is what you pay, value is what you get,
mm,
right? So you think about this in your job and anyone that has, has a job. I have a full-time job, right? You don't get paid based on your time.
mm,
You get paid based on your perceived value.
mm,
I said perceived for a reason because you may be worth $500,000, right? But for the pay grade, for the level, for what we need in this role, we're going to pay you this amount of money, right?
mm,
And so I would encourage anyone, like what you're doing now, whether you are making revenue from it now or in the future, I would encourage anyone to own something,
mm,
right? You know what I mean? Whether it's your blog, whether it's your podcast, whether it's you make little bracelets on the side or something like that. For me, when I got done writing the blueprint, when I hit that last period, I said to myself, I am successful. Because whether I sell 5 copies and my mom buys all 5 of them,
mm,
or I sell 5,000 of them, I will be addressed as author from now on, right? God has blessed me to be able to be called an author from now on, right? And because I think, and that's the thing, that is where my success came from. And then people like, oh, you wrote a book, what have you, like whatever. At one point in time, there was just me, Microsoft Word, and a blinking cursor. At
mm,
one point in time before it was written, right? And so I would say that a couple of things have happened. My greatest, I guess, so-called successes or what have you, or however you define success, were done in the trenches because of hardship,
mm,
right? The only reason I finished that book, I didn't even touch on this, in detail. The same teacher that inspired me to write that book, I started writing it 7 years later. Seven's number of completion, right? So I started writing on it 7 years later, reached out to her, said, hey, it took me a while, but I'm finally gonna, act on this purpose that, God's given me and that you helped cultivate, when I was in your classroom. And I said, I could use your help with it. She said, oh, wonderful. I can't wait to help you. Just let me know. Wonderful. I was like, okay, cool. Right. And so I started working on it and I got like 9 to 10 pages in and I just quit because I didn't like where it was going. I didn't feel like it was going to just be any good. And it just so happened, I got a call, I think it was December 14, 2015, telling me that my English teacher had passed away in a car accident. And I was down about 3 months about that. I mean, I was really, really down in the dumps. And it wasn't until I reached out to my mentor, Ty, who I just come out from under his tutelage, to say, hey, Ty, I've been working on something, man. And I was going to get my teacher to help me with it. She's no longer with us, but I promised I was going to do this. And I would love to get it done with your help. And I'm going to dedicate it to her memory. And that's how the book actually got finished. And so from that point on, and even after, the hardship, that's what led to speaking, right? So after that point, 2016, when the speaking presentation was developed, I said I was not going to let hardship have to happen in order for me to jump out on something or follow a passion or purpose that, that's placed in my heart. And so that's why I would encourage anybody. If you got something on your heart, don't let something bad happen for you to have to step out on it. You know what I mean? Because it'll be rewarding, when you get it done. But if the person or the people or what have you that inspired you to do it are not around to see it, it won't be as sweet.
Mm.
So that's why I would encourage people, anyone that's listening, if you got a dream, passion, idea, jump out on it, now. And, God will bless the works of your hands. You commit your work to the Lord, your thoughts will be established. And so that's what I think is the most important, aspect of life, the life that we live. You got one, you know what I mean? So if you like I said, if you write, 5 poems and you put them in a book and you said, hey, I may publish these one day or something like that, you own it. You know what I mean? You can pass that down, because you think about, like, when you go to your grandmother or grandfather's house and they have like some old books or old photographs or maybe some old postcards. Like, think about how special that is. And I know we're in a digital age right now, but you think about, 50 years from now, and you think about, your grandkids and what have you, being able to see something that you created, that you wrote, like, hey, my grandfather, my grandmother did this, or they loved this way, they supported people this way, or just a lasting effect. It doesn't have to be a tangible product, right? It can be something to the fact where your last name means something, because the great thing about, what my family created is that, in a small town I was in, wherever I went, people knew who I was because of the seeds my father and grandfather had planted, right? And how they treated people. Not because of what they had, because how they treated people. And
Mm.
so there was an expectation of how I was supposed to be, of how I was supposed to carry myself, because of the legacy that had been established. So don't let me, try to say, like, hey, if you don't publish something or write something or make money from something, that, oh, it's not going to be a good life. Like, no, you have an opportunity to create a lasting legacy for your last name. So when your grandkids, your aunts, your nieces, your nephews, they walk into a room or to a building, to a job interview, and they're related to you, and they get privileged, they get an opportunity, they get, passed up the line, you know what I mean? They can skip the line.
Mm.
That's when you have truly fulfilled your purpose, when the people that you love and care about the most, people you haven't even met yet, right? When they can experience the blessings, based on what you created and the sacrifices you made, that's when you've operated in your purpose. And you may not even see that,
Mm.
right? You may not even see it. You may not even be around to see it. But knowing that, when you look at your life and say, what, I did my absolute best.
Mm.
I gave everything I had. And that's what I think is a successful life, right?
Absolutely.
So,
And
yeah.
I think what you touch on is, it reminded me of what Ray Lewis said in a speech, and I love Ray, man. Ray's, man. I could go on, but he said, and he was speaking to, I want to say he was speaking to it was a video of him speaking to the Emory football team. I want to say it was Emory, or it was some college, some small school. But he was in the locker room, and he was saying that, and when you leave, he's like, when it's your time, he's like, it's your time, but when you go, let your last name be worth more than the number on that paycheck. Let your name be worth more.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
Ray,
Yeah.
Ray, when he said
Yeah.
when he say stuff like that, you get chills up down your spine. But I think that what you're saying aligns with that. Let your name be worth more than, or let, whatever it is that you do, that you can pass on, because I think that we forget that we can make, as we can, have value or perceive value to, these brands. At the same time, we can't pass on a logo. We only pass on things that we own. And it'll never be a perfect time. You know what I mean? It'll never, imagine if you, didn't, just sit down at the laptop or the computer and just, write, get on Microsoft Word. Imagine if you didn't think of, the teacher, that your English teacher who inspired you. Like, imagine if, you waited and you didn't, imagine if you weren't able to reach out and say, hey, I'm writing this book because you've inspired me. Imagine if you couldn't have that exchange. So it'll never be a right time, but in the same vein, it's like, in the end, you want to make sure that, your name and what you pass down is actually worth something, that's tangible.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I even say this, if you have a full version of Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office, you already have more than I have when I started writing my book,
That's
because
the hardest out there.
I had a pirated version. I had a pirated
Oh,
version of Microsoft Word. Like,
wow.
my homeboy came over and installed it on my computer for $25.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And even for a while, I was working on my mom's computer. It had a little red bar at the top saying, your trial offer is about to end. And I was still writing. I'm like, man, I hope they don't delete all this stuff,
Right.
I'm serious. I mean, so I think just, sharing those stories, man, the hardships and things like that. Like, I did not have a full version of Microsoft Word.
Wow.
I don't have an English degree. You know what I mean? It's just like, how do you write a book? Well, you write it one keystroke at a time. How do you go down a flight of steps? Well, you don't need to parachute. You take one step at a time. right? You just do what you have to do to get to that destination. And when you do it for the sake of purpose, influence, and like you talked about, I heard it in a song. It said, may your influence outlive you." Right. I think the same thing is kind of what you said, with Ray Lewis's quote, "May your influence outlive you." So when you're no longer here, that you left your mark on people, and that's what I think is the most important thing. Because I think about even now, like my grandmother, my aunt, like what they left in me, the things they told me and how they inspired me. That's what keeps me going, and it's not just any resources they left me, so to speak, but it's what they left in me as opposed to me. So it's just a lot, man. It's so multifaceted in life. It's just instead of teaching me lessons, and I'm just glad I'm able to kind of share what I'm learning while I'm in the process of learning it. Not just the point I've arrived that I'm the perfect person, in this sense. I mean, for me, like a focus right now is becoming the best person I can be, so I can be a father and a husband in the near future, or whenever God calls me to do it. Like that is my focus right now. So the opportunities I have are great, but like I said, you could. And for me, I think about it like this: like, let's someone gave you an exorbitant amount of money. We talked about it before. Would there be anything you'd rather be doing than maybe sitting on the couch or eating a dinner with someone that you love or you care about, right? And it might be a nicer couch, what I mean, if you made a lot of money, but still, I'd rather be on that couch, with this person I love and care about, or in this room with these people I care about, whether I have something or not, than anything. And it's like, for me, my mindset now is like, you could take everything I have right now, take everything I have, take everything, take your apartment, take car, take everything, take all I need. I need my parents, I need my cousin Chris, give me some Wi-Fi, give me Brianna, and
Right.
I'll be back in 3 months.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I mean, that's when I've come to realize it's just like, that's just not the, and that's not necessarily the bare minimum, but that is the apex, the maximum. Because sometimes we think, these things are just foundational pillars that keep us up, but really these are the things that hold us up and hold us down, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, they hold us up, they prop us up, but they also will hold us down in our darkest moments as well. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of where my mindset is now. Is just having those kind of people, in my life that that I know, if I have just like a Wi-Fi connection, cousin Chris, Bree, I can figure anything out. You know what I mean? Because those people that inspire me keep me going and keep me moving forward. So
Absolutely.
that's what it's all about, man.
Yeah. Well, we get towards the end of the show. We like to do this segment called "Taking Them to School."
Yeah.
Where we just kind of fire off just questions, and you just answer them to the best of your ability. All right.
Okay. All right. Let's do it. All right.
All right. First question is, who's gonna win the Super Bowl this weekend, and why?
Oh, man, I'm going with my homie, man.
Woo.
I'm gonna go against the GOAT, man. Go with my homie because of the weapons he has around him. I think there's gonna be something. Tyreek Hill may break the game open or something with some crazy play. So I'm gonna go with my homie.
Mahomes.
I'm going Mahomes.
All right, I'm going with Brady. We'll see
Yeah.
how we'll see how it shakes. I can't go against the grain on that one.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. I want to go with Brady. Everybody's going with Brady, so I'm gonna go with Mahomes. I'm not putting money on it, but I'm going with Mahomes.
Got you. When you're not focusing on your business or work or answer emails, like, what do you do to kind of like release, or like what are you doing outside of like the realm of like you being a professional? Like, what do you do to get away?
Yeah, I'm learning how to do self-care stuff. You know what I mean? That's something I've never really done before, so I'm learning to do that. So for me, it's taking a bath, reading a book,
Right.
and I help out with the strength staff at SMU to kind of still be around, people and young professionals to make sure I'm still staying relevant, what I do, and I'm speaking to the needs and be able to relate to the current student athletes. So those are the main things.
If you could collaborate with anyone, it could be an artist, it could be an athlete, it could be just anyone that you just admire. And what I mean by collaborate, it could be it could just be like a joint venture, it could be a passion project. Like, who would that singular person be?
And I think it would probably have to be Inky Johnson, man.
Mm.
Inky is a powerful, powerful speaker, man. So I listen to how he tells stories, how he places emphasis. Like, I study people, I study, how they speak, right? And it's not, because someone can tell the same story he's telling and it'd be nowhere near as impactful.
Right.
Because he knows where to put pauses. He knows what to say emphatically. He knows what to say to make it sound profound. And he also has a passion, authenticity behind it. So it's not a show or a strategy, so to speak. but he's also very skilled in how he presents that, and that comes with training and development. So I watch him a lot to be able to, hone and cultivate my craft so I can be better as well and reach people the way that I like to.
Absolutely. And then our last question we'd like to ask all our guests, what does it mean to school the system?
School the system. What it means to school the system is to have a if you desire. Now I'm not a part of LLC Twitter, you know what I mean? But if you desire,
Right.
having a 9 to 5 and having a 5 to 9, to where, if you're building someone else's dream, for 40 hours a week or plus, if you have a dream, something that you want to do, then spend a quarter of that, spend 2 hours of that working on something for yourself.
Hmm.
And that doesn't have to be something that can be sold. It can be something that's going to help you become a better person. But I would say, let the system's going to be the system,
Hmm.
right? Now, whether you become a cog in that system, whether you become one of the gears and you're just one of those conduits, I mean, that's up to you. And so someone put it to me very plainly the other day. When you think about, like, say, like a bicycle wheel, so to speak, right? You have what goes around the wheel, like what makes the wheel actually turn, the revolutions, the rubber around the tires. But you also have in the middle of it, you have the spoke, right? You have the kind of the middle piece, right? The focal point, and you have the spokes that come off of it, right? So you got to figure out, okay, where do I fit in this system? Am I just one of kind of the spokes here? Am I one that's kind of help, moving the revolution, and that's meant to, have a pun to it, right? So
Hmm.
you can really just understand, okay, where do I fit in this system?
Hmm.
And how am I using this system to help advance the kingdom, so to speak? Like, for
Ooh.
instance, you see the system with GameStop. You
Right.
saw the system at work. The system literally got gamed. So if you want to talk about gaming the
Right.
system got gamed.
Hmm.
And Wall Street got gamed, right, by some people after a common goal and a common initiative to say, hey, we're going to do this. And they got it done, right? And people profited from it, right? So I think that's the biggest thing, is to understand where you fit in that system, understand, not getting caught up in it, not becoming, so engulfed in it that you don't know it is a system,
Hmm.
and being able to say, okay, how can this system serve me? What can I learn from this system? And how can I take it, innovate, make it better, make my own, and create my own structure from it? That's what I would say it means to gain the system.
Absolutely. Will, I appreciate you so much for coming on, and just being open and honest about, your story, and speaking to more so to who, Will Baggett is, outside of, what your ventures are and what you've done in your career, but just the actual individual. And I know that the people that listen to this and watch it will feel inspired to not only go after, the things that they, whatever their passion projects are, whatever they're interested in, for the sake of loving themselves and showcasing it to the world. But I believe that listeners and viewers are gonna feel more confident in themselves and the product that they have with themselves, and understanding that, you don't have to, you don't have to attach yourself to a brand or logo, or, you don't have to, beat yourself down for your mistakes or, decisions that you made. You can give yourself grace. You can pay attention to the people that you have around you that are feeding into you, and understand that that's enough for you to bring to life whatever it is you want to bring to life. So I thank you. I appreciate you. And anything that, we can do on our platform to help further, your mission with young executives, in your book, and in all facets, we're here to support you. And I'm just, an immense gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man, for this wonderful opportunity. I, for a time, wondered why I had encountered or dealt with something or gone through some of the things I experienced. And this conversation has brought light to that. And I thank you so much for giving me an opportunity, for giving me a platform, and for being just a great listener and just someone that truly cares. And may God bless you and this wonderful platform. Hope you get sponsors from it and just
Yeah,
do immensely well, man. So, I'll
thank
be
you.
here if you need me. And thank you for everything that you've done.
I appreciate you as well. Have a nice evening.
All right, likewise.